Hola, 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 y bienvenidos a otro episodio de Listen, Read, Interact. Welcome to another episode of Listen, Read, Interact. My name is Andrew Snyder. I am the host of the Listen, Read, Interact podcast. I am a Spanish language professor. I teach at the college in my town, and I am loving this show. I've been making this show, obviously, now for more than a year. Once a week, I've been dropping an episode, as the youths are saying. I dropped an episode. When it fell, I got to pick it up. I guess that's your job as the listener. Well, what is Listen, Read, Interact? Listen, Read, Interact is a Spanish language learning podcast. And as the name implies, the idea of the show is for you to listen to Spanish, to read Spanish, which obviously you'll need to go to the show notes page to read it, and to interact with Spanish in some way. If you do those things, listen to Spanish, read Spanish, and interact with the language that you hear and read, over time you will pick up Spanish. You will learn Spanish. You will, what we call in the business, acquire Spanish. And in second language acquisition, there is a difference between learning, which is like a conscious process. You sit down and you try to memorize stuff actively, consciously. And acquisition, which is this subconscious process that just takes place with exposure to the language, immersion in comprehensible materials. So the idea of the show is that you listen to Spanish. Obviously, you're gonna hear some Spanish in the rest of the episode. To read Spanish, which you should do at the show notes page, you can read along. You can read example sentences and you can see their translations into English. You can interact as well by doing the various kinds of interactives that are on the show notes page. Now, how do you get to the show notes page? Well, there is a link in the episode description down below in your podcast player. You can also go to listenreadinteract.com/64, since this is episode number 64, and it will take you right there. There's also a search function on the homepage, so if you're interested in finding it, you can just search for 64, and that should find you the episode. If you're brand new to Spanish, I actually recommend that you don't start with today's episode. I've put together a course. It's free. There's no login required. And that's at listenreadinteract.com/start. The course is called Start Here. And so listenreadinteract.com/start is a wonderful place for you to start. There's 6 story-based lessons that are each quite long. So maybe you want to break it up into not just everything in one day, but maybe you want to do a little bit one day and then a little bit the next day and a little bit the next day and then move on to the next lesson, do a little bit one day, do a little bit the next day, a little bit the following day, and then move on to the next lesson, etc. So listenreadinteract.com/start is a wonderful place for you to start. Those actually were based on episodes, and so if you want to just listen to your podcast player, you can go to that's the website, starting with episode 50. That's where it starts. And that episode has got a little thing on the title which says Start Here. Now, episodes 1 through 49 are great as well. But I've gotten better at this over the course of recording so many episodes, and the format has changed a bit. And so I like episode 50 as a nice starting point, and also the course. So it's the same lessons, episodes 50 through 55 are those lessons, but they're put all together in that course, and that's a great place to send people if you're wanting to send people to learn Spanish this way. I think that stories are by far the best way to learn language. We are storytelling creatures, and so if you can get comprehensible messages, meaning messages you can understand in Spanish in story form, I think our stamina is better than just reading examples. And so the more messages you can process in Spanish and understand, meaning maybe not every word, but most of what you hear, most of what you read, then your brain has something to hook into, and it will start to develop a language system around those messages that you've processed. It says, hey, those sounds that I heard had meaning. Let's try to remember this. Hey, those words in that order with those spellings meant this thing. Let's try to remember this. So that's how you acquire language, is you listen to Spanish or whatever language you're trying to learn. You read that language and you interact with the messages that have been communicated to you and that you have deciphered subconsciously. So check out that if you're a new Spanish speaker, brand new to the language. listenreadinteract.com/start. And every episode of there's various kinds of episodes on this show. You'll notice in your feed there's a couple of bonus episodes that have come out. There'll be more in the coming year. Different kinds of episodes. Maybe there'll be some culture-based. There have been a couple of those already. There will be some grammar-based episodes, which will be targeting something very specific. There'll be some teacher-focused episodes, which will appear in the feed. But the main bread and butter of this show, the main idea, is to have story-based episodes. It's how I teach language in my classroom. I think it's probably the best way to teach language, and it's at least the best way I've discovered. And maybe there's something out there that someone else has come up with that is just incredible, but storytelling for me in the classroom is a wonderful way of structuring a class, and it just gives so much context to new vocabulary. And when you're learning a language, you really don't want too much new vocabulary at once. You want to limit vocabulary until you feel good about the vocabulary that you've learned, and then you can add some new vocabulary, but not neglecting the old vocabulary. So there's a lot to it, right? Like there's a lot of words you have to learn to become quote unquote fluent in the language. And so I think that storytelling is just that perfect vehicle because it lets you add little bits of language here and there while still hammering home the high frequency vocabulary that is just naturally there in a storytelling setting. So each episode then of the regular episodes, not the bonus content, but the actual episodes called Listen, Read, Interact, like this is one of them, are structured around a story. And so the end goal is to get to the last section, which is the complete reading and interaction. So you're going to have some complete reading and complete listening with some comprehension questions, with some other ways to interact with that text. But the first two parts of the show are meant to help you scaffold your way to the last part of the show. So the first part will be some example sentences and some ways to interact with that vocabulary. Maybe on the show notes page, there are some definitions. There's kind of an ordering activity where you have some sentences that are mixed up and you try to order them. There's a little fill-in-the-blank quiz targeting that vocabulary. And those example sentences are wonderful for a dictation. So a great way to interact with the example sentences is as you hear them, try to write them down. There's a nice template which you can find on listenreadinteract.com/64. And there's a link to a nice template that you can download for free called a dictation template. But there's also other ways to interact. One other way would be to simply click on the sentence and reveal its translation. Did you understand what it said? If not, the translation will help you acquire some new vocabulary. So lots and lots of ways to interact. And this is perfect for a dictation in that first section. And if you're a teacher, you can click on the classroom mode. There is a button there that says classroom mode, and it kind of makes it look like a PowerPoint presentation. It fills up the whole screen in the browser, and so it's a nice way to interact. It shows one at a time, or you can click on reveal all and show them all if you'd like. One at a time, I think, is a great way to go through and do a dictation, because you can turn your screen off and then display it, talk about things that you wrote, that the students wrote down. It's a wonderful activity. So, and this part two is building off of that vocabulary And it is a short story. It's a short version of the story in part 3, but it's generally in the first person. So the complete reading is usually in the third person, which is a very natural way to tell a story. But the first version of it in part 2 is a first person version. Because if you want to talk about yourself, you have to say, I do this, and I am, and I want, and I have. And in order to be able to do that, you have to hear that language. And so it's a wonderful way as well to pick up that yo form, the I form in Spanish. Okay, when you hear the music, we're going to start all in Spanish. We'll hear the examples, and you'll hear a bell, and the bell will signal a transition. And we'll go to part 2. You'll hear another bell. We'll have a brief intermission, and we'll come back with the final part after the last bell, which is the complete reading and interaction. As I said before, you can follow along, and I highly recommend following along at listenreadinteract.com/64. Ejemplos. Número 1. Mi familia vive en las faldas de una cordillera grande. Mi familia vive en las faldas de una cordillera grande. Mi familia vive en las faldas de una cordillera grande. 2. En esta región hay 4 estaciones muy marcadas. En esta región hay 4 estaciones muy marcadas. En esta región hay 4 estaciones muy marcadas. 3. Mi nieta estudia en la universidad y vive cerca de mí. Mi nieta estudia en la universidad y vive cerca de mí. Mi nieta estudia en la universidad y vive cerca de mí. 4. Nos gusta pasar tiempo juntos los fines de semana. Nos gusta pasar tiempo juntos los fines de semana. Nos gusta pasar tiempo juntos los fines de semana. 5. A mucha gente le gusta esquiar más que nada en el invierno. A mucha gente le gusta esquiar más que nada en el invierno. A mucha gente le gusta esquiar más que nada en el invierno. 6. Cuando hace mal tiempo, buscamos un lugar seguro. Cuando hace mal tiempo buscamos un lugar seguro. Cuando hace mal tiempo, buscamos un lugar seguro. 7. En una película famosa aparece un monstruo de nieve. En una película famosa aparece un monstruo de nieve. En una película famosa aparece un monstruo de nieve. 8. Aunque el monstruo es grande, el lugar es una zona segura. Aunque el monstruo es grande, el lugar es una zona segura. Aunque el monstruo es grande, el lugar es una zona segura. Lectura breve. Me llamo Pedro. Soy un hombre mayor y soy profesor en la universidad. Enseño biología, historia y química. Soy una persona lista. Vivo en Puyallup, una ciudad pequeña en el estado de Washington. La ciudad está en las faldas de la cordillera de las Cascadas. Puyallup tiene 4 estaciones y vistas muy bonitas. Tengo una nieta que se llama Patty. Ella es alta, bonita y muy lista. Patty vive conmigo mientras estudia en la universidad. A los dos nos gusta pasar tiempo juntos. Nos gusta navegar, hacer senderismo, leer y estudiar en el parque. Más que nada, nos gusta esquiar. Un día voy a esquiar con Patty en el Monte Cristal. Estamos esquiando cuando oigo un ruido. Es una avalancha. Patty y yo tenemos miedo. Empezamos a esquiar. Estamos esquiando muy rápido y llegamos a una zona segura. Nos sentamos al lado de un árbol para descansar. De repente, oigo otro ruido. Veo al abominable hombre de las nieves. El monstruo tiene hambre y yo tengo miedo otra vez. Patty quiere irse, pero yo tengo una idea. Saco mi kit de química. En un abrir y cerrar de ojos, mido unas químicas y las mezclo en un tubo. Justo cuando termino, el hombre de nieves me agarra. Le vacío el tubo en la boca. El monstruo empieza a hacerse más pequeño. En unos momentos es casi un bebé de nieves. Patty me dice: Ciencia 1, monstruo 0. Yo sonrío, porque pienso lo mismo. Just a quick intermission. a brief one to say thank you to everyone who has donated to Listen, Read, Interact. Listen, Read, Interact is a value for value show. So I put in a ton of effort trying to make each episode a very effective one for language acquisition. And so this is a wonderful part of any language learning routine. You can do a little bit one day, a little bit the next day, a little bit the next day. Obviously, you'll need more if you want to acquire Spanish. It's a numbers game. How many hours of messages can you process in Spanish? And my aim is to give you a very high quality, high value use of your time, which will let you listen to Spanish, read Spanish, and interact with Spanish and help you along your way. If you're getting value out of this show, let's say you listen for a number of episodes, why don't you put a number on the amount of value that you're getting back from the show? And you can give that amount to the show to help us keep going. My goal is to hit 100 episodes, but after 100 episodes, I'm going to kind of take stock of where I'm at. And should I keep going? Or is it not worth it for people? If it's not worth it for people, I don't know if I want to keep going. So please consider making a donation to the show, and you can do that at listenreadinteract.com/donate. There's a link in the episode description as well. listenreadinteract.com/donate. Any amount, any frequency, it's all helpful. It's all a signal to say, hey, keep making this, keep doing this. This is what we need. And so if you are enjoying it and you're getting value, please consider making a donation to the show. Thank you to everyone who has donated in the past. Anyone who donates $50 and above, I will read your name and amount and location on the show. And anyone under $50, I'll keep anonymous for anonymous reasons, for reasons of anonymity, as I've heard it said before. So listenreadinteract.com/donate. Muchísimas gracias. Lectura completa. En el estado de Washington hay una ciudad pequeña, situada en las faldas de la cordillera de las Cascadas. Puyallup cuenta con 4 estaciones distintas y vistas pintorescas. Vive en Puyallup un hombre mayor. Se llama Pedro. Es un hombre alto y relativamente guapo. Tiene 70 años. Es listo. Trabaja como profesor en la universidad. Enseña muchas materias porque es listo. Enseña biología, historia y química. Pedro es el abuelo de una joven llamada Patty. Es una mujer alta y bonita. Como su abuelo, Patty es bien lista. Algún día quiere ser presidenta. Por ahora, Patty vive con su abuelo mientras estudia en la universidad. A Pedro y a Patty les gusta pasar tiempo juntos y hacer muchas actividades. Por ejemplo, les gusta navegar y practicar senderismo. También les gusta leer y estudiar en el parque. Más que nada, les gusta esquiar. Un día, Pedro y Patty están esquiando en el Monte Cristal, una estación de esquí cerca de Puyallup. Están esquiando cuando oyen algo. Es el ruido de una avalancha. Pedro y Patty tienen miedo. ¡Vámonos!, dice Pedro. Así que Pedro y su nieta empiezan a esquiar. Están esquiando a toda velocidad. Afortunadamente, ellos llegan a una zona fuera del alcance de la avalancha. Se sientan al lado de un árbol a descansar. Están descansando cuando oyen un ruido. Es el abominable hombre de las nieves. El hombre de nieves tiene hambre. Pedro y Patty tienen miedo. Vámonos, dice Patty. No, dice Pedro. Tengo una idea. Pedro saca un kit de química. En un abrir y cerrar de ojos, Pedro mide unas químicas y las mezcla en un tubo. Justo cuando termina, el hombre de nieves agarra a Pedro. El profesor vacía el tubo en la boca del monstruo. El hombre de nieves empieza a hacerse más pequeño. Dentro de unos momentos es prácticamente un bebé de nieves. Ciencia 1, monstruo 0, dice Patty. Es exactamente lo que iba yo a decir, dice Pedro. Bueno. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, Listen, Read, Interact, number 64. There is a new episode every Saturday. Please remember us for our next episode, listenreadinteract.com/donate. Muchísimas gracias y hasta la próxima.